Hey everyone, at the end of my last video, I mentioned that I planned on making a video about all of the courses that I took in OMSCS, and I started making that video, but it ended up getting pretty long, so I decided I'm going to split it up into 10 shorter videos. This first video is a review of the first course that I took in OMSCS back in the spring 2022 semester, and that course is AI for Robotics. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the content of the course, how the course is structured, some pros and cons of the course, as well as who I would recommend this course to. So the content of the course, it's divided up into 4 main sections. The first is localization, which allows you to map your surroundings in space using techniques like Kalman filters or particle filters. The second part of the class talks about pathfinding and mapping, and this allows you to map yourself from a start position to an end goal. The third part of this class talks about path smoothing, and this uses techniques like PID in order to smooth out the paths that you find using your pathfinding algorithms so that they're more realistic in a real-world scenario. The final part of this course is a dive into the SLAM algorithm, which stands for simultaneous localization and mapping, and this allows you to both localize and map yourself using the same algorithm. So overall, I think that this course is really well structured. It starts with some lectures, which while they can be a little bit surface level, I do think that they're a good intro into the content, and they're also pretty fun. I'll also mention that in the Ed discussion forum, the TAs and the professor who runs the class also post supplemental material, which are helpful when you go to actually complete the projects. There are also some problem sets. When I took it, it was 6 problem sets. These are generally more like math-focused questions where you fill out a few lines in a Python file. And I think that they give you a good foundation for the different concepts you need when completing the projects. The main part of the class is the 5 projects. I'll put some screenshots on the screen here, but overall, these projects were super visual, and I think that they were really fun. In fact, I think that these were some of the most fun projects that I did in OMSCS. All the projects use Python, so they're pretty approachable. Finally, there's one midterm and a final. Overall, compared to other courses that I took, these tests were probably on the easier side. So some of the pros of the class, first I'll say that it was just really fun. It's project heavy, which is great. I really enjoyed classes like that. And the projects used Python, which is also a plus. The class is also really well organized. I found that the TAs were really active in the forums answering questions that students had, and it was pretty logical how the content progressed, so it kind of built on itself, which was great. The lectures, like I mentioned, were maybe a little bit surface level, but overall I do think that they were really good, and they were kind of like a fun, engaging intro into a lot of the concepts. I would also say that the problem sets were really well thought out. I think that they gave a good foundation in terms of the math that was needed to actually solve a lot of the projects, so that was nice. As for cons, I don't think that there are too many. The course might be a little bit outdated at this point. So these days, a lot of the concepts that are used in this course aren't used anymore. A lot of the techniques these days focus on computer vision or deep learning. And while I do think that this class gives you a good foundation, it would have been at least nice to see a final section of the class give an introduction into some of these more modern techniques. This class is also a little bit niche. The concepts that I learned in this class are probably the least applicable to my day job, which is fine. When I started the course, I was actually working in robotics, and so it was interesting to learn about, but at the same time, it's not the most useful now. I would also say that one of the more frustrating parts of this class is the parameter tuning that goes into all of the projects. I heard this from someone else, but I think it's really true. It's probably the most difficult part of the projects is knowing where your implementation stops and where parameter tuning begins. Sometimes it's hard to figure out if your parameters are just way off and you have to tune them more, or if you actually have a bug in your implementation. So just keep that in mind if you end up taking the course. Who would I recommend this class to? I would recommend it to a lot of folks. First, I would recommend it to people who don't have an undergraduate degree in computer science. I didn't have one, and I found that having a strong math background coming from an engineering undergrad really helped me in this class. The hardest part of this class, I would say, is the math. So probability concepts like Bayes' rule, as well as some more advanced linear algebra concepts were a little bit tricky at times, and having that background really helped. The actual implementation of the Python code is pretty straightforward once you actually figure out what you're actually trying to do in the projects. I would also recommend this course to anyone who's at least interested in learning a little bit about AI. Like I said, a lot of the techniques in this class are maybe a little bit outdated at this point, but I think that they lay a good foundation for some of the more modern concepts. I would also recommend this class to anyone who's just starting OMSCS because it is really well structured. And finally, I'd recommend this class to anyone who is just looking for a fun, project-heavy course. I know that in OMSCS, the courses that I tended to like the most were the ones that had a big portion of the grade dedicated to projects, and this is definitely one of them. So that's my review of AI for Robotics. Thanks everyone for watching. In my next video, I'll talk about the next course that I took in OMSCS, which is Computer Networks. And I'll see you next time.